Well, now that these, I'm not even sure what kind of Spider-Man films we can even call these are over. Everyone decides putting out their own certain ranking video, so I might as well join the party and give my own good sense on the whole topic. Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here, 3 Topics Game here to share with you another one of my worst to best ranking videos to share with you guys today. I recently got done watching Kraven the Hunter, for God's sake. And now that apparently the last of these, like, Spider-Man related films that don't have Spider-Man in them are officially done. We now have 6 of them, and I think it's time we rank all 6 of them from worst to best. Though I can say not many of them were very good. So if you happen to enjoy this video by the end, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to track me on my future videos. Remember, if any of you guys have any ideas for any top 10 list videos, or ranking videos, or review videos, or just question general visions in general, please let me know what you would like to see, and I will try to get it up as soon as I can. So, we have 6 of them, going from all 3 Venom films, so the Venom trilogy, and Morbius, Kraven the Hunter, and Madam Web. So I'm just going to go in order in terms of which one I think are worst to best, and I would be very curious to see how other people's lists play out. So, heck, this is what I think is, without question, the worst out of these kind of anti-Spider-Man or un-Spider-Man films in this, like, short, survived, like, cinematic universe. Okay, Madam Web. No question. No question. Not only is it the worst amongst these films, you could put an argument that this is, without question, the worst comic book related superhero film of all time. Not only is this horribly acted, not only is the script awful, not only is the premise awful, not only are some of the ab-dubbing highly noticeable, which takes you immediately out of the film, so not only are the action set pieces boring, not only does it misrepresent what the film is going to be and misdirects you thinking that, oh, you're going to see certain things when, oh no, those are kind of flash forwards to something you'll never actually see. But what makes this just so awful was that I really do not think in any sense you could have actually have made a good story around Madam Web in general. I mean, at least when you look at all the other characters like Venom, Kraven the Hunter, and Morbius, I can actually see under certain conditions with certain story elements added in certain directions that they could have taken those films, you could have actually made a genuine good movie worth watching. That is not the case with Madam Web. Madam Web has never, ever seemed interesting to the point where she ever needed her own film, which is why I was so confused about her character. My only real experience with Madam Web is like a couple of comic book issues, and like, but mainly her presence in the animated Spider-Man show from Fox Kids in the 90s. Like, that is like my like sharpest memory of like what Madam Web is actually for, and like what is her function. And you simply cannot put her as an action hero in any way. That simply was never going to work. This idea was doomed to fail the second it was even scripted on paper. And that is why it not only is the worst, this is perhaps one of the few characters in comic books that could never have had a good movie in any way, which is why Madam Web is easily the worst film in this series. Taking the number 5 spot is Morbius. Oh, I mean, this was just a bad case if you actually have a solid cast around a character that you could have made work, and you just dropping the ball hard. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I think this movie would have worked a little bit better had Blade had like some sort of involvement. And some say, well, you know, Disney kind of owns the rights to Blade. But it's like, look, if Sony is willing to let Spider-Man come into their movies, I don't see why they couldn't have made some sort of deal to have like Blade or a version of Blade have like some minor appearance or presence in this film, because I think that would have helped the film. But Morbius was just not fun. It was bad to the point where it's not even like so bad it's good. Now, I will say this. There were a couple of hilariously bad moments that were like, you know, they were funny to look at because of how bad they were. So I'll give it that. It didn't make me laugh. But I just think that how it was projected, how they executed the character of Morbius was just so inaccurate to what you would expect from the comic books, and it was just a mess from beginning to end. I will admit, there was some potential. I could see that there were some story elements in some direction that they could have gone had they stayed on that path. But like the minute it starts getting some momentum, it just goes off a cliff and then starts undoing any of the progress it could have done. This was just an awful film. I'm glad it bombed in the box office, but I think anyone who was involved in this simply was doing it for a paycheck. And I think that they might have been tricked into doing this film because they're like, oh, we're in a Marvel film? Oh, maybe that'll lead to something else. And then they realize this, they read the script and they're like, oh, it's that kind of film. So, yeah, I think I feel bad for them. Taking number 4 spot is going to have to go to Kraven the Hunter, which I just got done watching a couple of hours ago. And I just got to say, like, I'm not going to say it is an awful film. And it kind of enters that borderline territory of it's so bad, it's like not necessarily good but fun. But I will confess that there are a number of elements in here I did generally like. I think the main lead, Aaron Taylor, I think he does fine as Kraven. He certainly is not like the best interpretation of the character per se, but I could kind of see him as a very, very beginner version of that character. I think that's fine. I think some of the action scenes are fine. Some of the CGI is awful. I thought the Rhino was ridiculous. Some people like to spit all over Paul Giamatti in The Amazing Spider-Man. Holy snap, is that leagues ahead of what we got here? And I think he was only in that film for 60 seconds? And that was better than what we got here. The inclusion of just so many villains and not even being able to properly show how they actually are is ridiculous. I'm sick and tired of this practice of these filmmakers taking villains and trying to portray them as heroes. I mean, I don't know if they're trying to go with this whole concept of, well, evil is simply a matter of perspective. So perhaps from our perspective, this character would be evil. From their perspective, they don't see it that way. And that just doesn't work when you try to do that with every character. Every character who's connected to the comic book characters is a villain character, and you're trying to make them sympathetic. And when every character is trying to do that, it doesn't work. And there are even some villains that are thrown in here for no damn reason that are just stupid. They're doing stupid things. And there's only so much stupid you can handle. And I understand some of you might want to consider this to be one of those, oh, turn your brain off. But look, no, even when my brain was turned off, it was still too much for me to handle. That was so ridiculous. And this could have worked. It really does. I could see that there was genuine potential here. But they easily dropped the ball. And hopefully, years later, people look at the movie examples like this and learn from them and just don't repeat the same mistakes. Because this film repeated a lot of the same mistakes that were in so many of these other films in this universe. And it's just sad that after so many attempts, they just wouldn't learn the lesson. Which is why Kraven, unfortunately, has taken the number 4 spot on my list. Taking number 3 spot is Venom: The Last Dance. And oh man, dear Lord, how this series has fallen. It just got worse and worse as this trilogy went on. And I gotta admit, I couldn't even get myself to see this in theaters. I had to watch a bootleg copy of this. And I'm glad I did, because I would not have wanted to pay for this film. There's so much they got wrong here. And by the time it's over, it's just I don't even care. I mean, the relationship between Venom and Eddie is okay. A couple of action scenes are fine. Some of the CGI is cool. But there's certain story directions that they think that you think they're going in that direction, and then it's just a mess. It's so poorly executed. And the problem with movies like this is that as I go along throughout a series or a trilogy, I always judge the movie harder. So perhaps if this error had said happened in the first film, I won't be so hard on it. But because this is the third film, I am the most critical of even the slightest issues. And there are issues spread all throughout this film, which made it just, even not watching it in theaters, made it a hard film to get through. And something that I've only seen once, and I have absolutely no interest in watching again. And it's such a shame, because I think that the Venom trilogy started on a really good note. But I guess it fell from grace from there. So that's why Venom: The Last Dance is the number 3 spot on my list. Taking the number 2 spot is Venom: Let There Be Carnage. they kind of they didn't handle this as well as I thought they could have. There was a lot about this film I think could have worked. I mean, the idea of having Carnage in the cast of characters could have worked. I don't think that they executed it as well as they needed to. This needed to go hard R, and it needed to be far more disturbing than it ended up actually being. And there were a number of characters that were thrown in here that just had no real presence and no reason to be here. The dynamic between Venom and Eddie, I think, is the worst in here. I would even say it's worse here than in Last Dance. I think it was actually better in The Last Dance with what was going on in that situation. But like here, it was kind of annoying. It was like two nagging characters. It was like a breakup. It's like, oh, they're breaking up and then they're gonna get back together, deal with this massive threat at the end. And it was so predictable. There were characters that just did not work. You had a dynamic that by this point just wasn't working, dealing with a threat that wasn't executed properly. It just a couple of tweaks could have made this a genuine good movie, but that is not the case. Now, unfortunately, I did pay to see this in theaters, but like The Last Dance, I've only seen this film once, and I have no interest on ever watching it again, which is why Venom: Let There Be Carnage is number 2 on my list. All right, taking the number 1 spot is gonna have to go to the very first Venom film. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I actually genuinely defend this film. I think it's a good movie. Not great. It didn't need to be great. I didn't expect this to be a great film, but a good movie. And I'm going to actually check out a number of other YouTubers that are ranking these films, and I will be surprised if Venom 1 is not at the top of the list, because I actually think that because the dynamic in the relationship between Eddie and Venom starts here, it's a lot more interesting because they're kind of coming at odds. I think the threat of the symbiotes is definitely very interesting. I think a number of the supporting characters play the roles very well. I think the action set pieces are fantastic. I think some of the music, even the music, stood out a lot. I think this was a very, very good first place for how they could have developed the Venom character. I absolutely believe that Venom could have worked. I think the challenge with having Venom in a story that doesn't involve Spider-Man is that you typically want to see what Venom would have been like after his interaction with Spider-Man. It's like, okay, he's already met Spider-Man, now we move on, now we can see what he's like on his own. But for a character that never got to actually interact with Spider-Man, I think this was a very, very solid, good attempt that had a lot of potential, which, as we all know, sadly did not pay out. But I think on its own, this is a solid movie. I have seen it multiple times. I saw it at least twice in theaters. I've seen it multiple times on streaming. I do think that for me, I do enjoy this film. I think the casting is great. I think some of the visuals still hold up. I think some of the characters, even the side characters, are great and memorable, which obviously stay over the course of the rest of the films. And this is a good movie, and the only good movie that came out of these 6 films that I will still defend even to this day, which is why Venom is easily the best of the kind of anti-unused Spider-Man Universe films. So that's my ranking of all 6 of these films. I would like to know, how would you rank these 6 films? Let me know your ranking in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.